Hello, class. Let me get the what we're supposed to be talking about up here for everybody to look at. There we go. All right. Okay, so our agenda today is we are going to spend just a few moments talking about how to give an effective presentation. And the reason we're doing that is that at the end of the class, in one of our last classes, your team is you're going to be assigned to teams, and your team is going to present a media plan you have done for something. And I therefore want to plant some seeds about how to be effective at presenting. The earlier the better. So we're just going to spend a few minutes on this. We're then going to quickly review the last class, which was mostly about out-of-home advertising. I'm going to review. I'm also going to add a couple of thoughts to it. And then we are going to do a lecture on the second media type. It's a traditional media type. Traditional media types are non-interactive, non-internet media types. Kind of old-fashioned, quote-unquote, media types. So we're going to talk about newspapers. Okay, so presenting. I go by something called the Tellem rule, and there are only 3 parts to the rule. Very easy to remember. If you do these things, you are going to vastly improve the quality of your presentations, and you're going to be better than most other people who are presenting, because most people don't do this. The Tellem rule. Number 1, tell them what you're going to tell them. Number 2, tell them. Number 3, tell them what you told them. What does that mean? It means you start with an agenda. Today, we are going to talk to you about the following things. 1, 2, 3, 4. It will take about half an hour. The ground rules are interrupt with questions anytime you want to. And then once we're done, we'll have another little Q&A session, and then everybody will have time to break for lunch. It lets everybody know where they're going, that somebody's driving the car, that they don't have to be nervous about what's next, or are we going to run into something, or, it's all taken care of. They can sit back and listen. Okay. Then you tell them. You do your presentation. And when you're done, you say, okay, so here's the agenda that we covered, everybody. We talked about this, 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 and this, and concluded that going with suggestion XYZ will be good for everyone. Our next step is you folks are going to think about this for another few days. And when is a good time for us to follow up with you? Next Tuesday. And who should we call? Fred? Okay, fine. So, at the end, you have left them with 2 or 3 key thoughts to remember. Remember, it's always hard for people to remember. You've shared a lot of words. You want to leave with a focus. 1, 2, 3. And you've clarified what the next steps are. Everybody knows the direction and what's happening. No one needs to call anyone and say, what do we do next? You have an agenda, you have your content, and then you have a summary. Here are a couple of more thoughts about presenting. Of course, as you can see, I don't follow my own recommendations, but as a professor, I reserve the right to do that at any time. It's just one of those things that comes with being a professor. First thing I say is people don't remember words, they remember visuals, and then, of course, I give you a slide full of words, which is the worst kind of slide to have. But I was trying to make a lot of points. So basically, in any kind of communication, you've heard pictures speak louder than words. It's true. A visual of you must have a visual background for your presenting. And they will remember the pictures, the charts, the simple charts and graphs, the pictures of things speak more loudly than anything. And by the way, if you watch many of the talking heads on TV, I don't know how many of you watch last week, whatever it is, the news last week with John Oliver. That's just one example. I'm not recommending anything. But many hosts, Samantha Bee, of course you can see the kinds of things I watch. But anyway, There's a visual background while they're talking, okay, that clarifies and kind of makes the point that they're trying to make and makes it very much easier to understand them, okay? That's what we're talking about. It makes understanding and comprehension much easier with good visuals, okay? I believe in presenting, particularly a recommendation sort of presentation, that having a theme which states your case is really good, and it helps provide a spine to the presentation. It should show up visually on all your slides or whatever you're using as visual aids. It should be introduced at the beginning and then repeated at the end of the presentation. Yeah, people usually will remember no more than 3 ideas. So hit those 3 at the beginning and the end. When you're up in front of people talking, move around. Use the space. Use your body. Use your arms. And effective presenters, effective speakers always do that because you yourself are a visual aid to your presenting. Okay, you can emphasize things, you can point, you can a big idea and widen your arms. That's effective to do. Remember, any communication is a two-way street, meaning that it just can't be you yapping away up there. Even if you are a professor. It's a good idea to notice if people are falling asleep or looking at their computers. You want to stop and ask, is this making sense? Any questions at this point? And try to get some real feedback. And if concerns do come up, real questions, and objections, that's like the best thing that could happen because then you can address those issues while you're there, and it will make you much, much, much more successful. Okay. All right. So are they getting it? Ask them. Most of my students, mostly because they don't have enough time to rehearse presentations and kind of practice and learn their words, tend to talk to their slides. They're kind of reading what they wrote on their slides, and that's not a good way to present. Okay. You need to practice and know what you're saying so you don't have to do that. Every slide should make like 1 point. Don't try to have 3 or 4 different points per slide. Remember, the purpose of the visual aid is to emphasize like 1 point, not 5. So don't overcomplicate your slides. Every presentation needs next steps. What must be done by whom and when. That, of course, is good for any business presentation. So I have a deck from a long time ago that's all about how to give an effective presentation. I scanned every page of the deck, and I'm embarrassed to tell you how old it is. But when I was an agency account executive working on Procter & Gamble at the beginning of my career after getting my business degree, the agency I was working at sent, which was what is now Saatchi & Saatchi, by the way, you may have heard of it, still exists. Young account executives like me were sent to a presentation training camp for 2 or 3 days. And that's what this was, and I copied it. And it's amazing. I am going to put it online for you guys to look at, and if you're smart, you'll keep a copy of it. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and then we're going to do our review of last class.